Hello and welcome to today's podcast on the queer body and my podcast, Lifestyle with Luke Lintop, the top podcast for wellness, corporate health, and living your best life. Today, we're going to go deeper into what it means to be queer and also what it means to take care of your body in a way that suits you. And I'm joined here and honored to be joined by the amazing Dr. Laura Polak. We actually met online through one of my clients, Jen, and Dr. Laura Polak is a somatic coach and founder and director of Radiant Health and the Queer Body podcast. Dr. Laura has been involved in queer activism for 30 years and is a holistic healer. She has a doctorate in chiropractic, a BS, and a BA in global education, as well as holding certificates in embodied social justice, leadership alliance, NSA, and more. Among many life experiences, she has been a teacher, a construction worker, the only woman in her union, started a nonprofit, and has been a proud mom. She thrives in helping people reach their full potential so we can truly change the world we live in. Thank you so much for joining us, Laura. It is an honor, and thank you for inviting me to be interviewed on your podcast just 2 years ago. And I'd love to hear more about your story and the great work that you do as we talk about the queer body.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me on your show. It's wonderful to be with you again.
Absolutely, it's an honor.
Such a bright presence. Which thing would you like me to jump in on? My goodness,
I'd love to hear kind of your story and your why starting, and I know that we shared just a bit about your story, but what has brought you to this pathway of someone who is an expert in the queer body and in physical, mental, and spiritual health?
happy to do so. So we will go back just because even there in my little introduction, we talked about, kind of my path of figuring out who I am and who I wanted to be. I really wanted to create change in the world. That's always been very important to me. And I grew up in a family where we did a lot of travel overseas, helping people out of poverty-stricken conditions by empowering them to make better choices, not through proselytization, but through asking questions and saying, hey, what do you need here? And so I was really excited about that. And I got a reflection that most of the damage was done back here in the United States, and went, wow, we need to start educating people how to look at how we are affecting other cultures, how we are affecting other people. So I went on the path of becoming a teacher. And so I became a teacher in something called global education, which helps people look at their interconnections to everybody else and everything on the planet. And it was really wonderful, except for one thing. I was, about 18 when I first started teaching. No, I couldn't. I was 21. And I didn't like disciplining children. And a lot of the teaching is not really teaching, but helping people learn how to fit into constructs so that they can learn all the things that they have to learn. And I'm all about breaking open boxes and not like following all those rules. So it was a mismatch with my heart and with what I was hoping to qualify and change. So then I went into construction. It's kind of silly, but I'd always been a dancer. Through my whole life, I was in a contemporary modern dance company. And then I started doing contact improv. And so I was like, okay, I'm going to focus on my dance work and I'm going to just make money. And so they needed a woman in the hod carrier local 36. And I started doing construction work, which is lifting heavy pounds of cement all day long, 100-pound bags of cement. And that was awesome. I made a killer living and I got to dance on the side. But needless to say, I hurt my back. And I was already in this kind of like, what am I going to be? What am I going to do? How do I pair changing the world and the physical body? What is this path? And so I found a chiropractor, and that chiropractor had me start looking at how to heal naturally without drugs or surgery. But even more so, then I followed this path of how to heal ourselves naturally, intuitively, in a holistic manner. And I paired up all of my previous experiences and found this type of chiropractic that's very low force and holistic. And then I began somatic coaching. And then I began to work with the queer body, which is how I ended up here. That's like, there you go, a mini capsule of Dr. Laura and her pathway.
That's fantastic. I feel like we have so many parallels, Laura, since I found yoga when I had patellofemoral syndrome and I gave up on my ability to get fit because whenever I started running, walking long distances, I would limp, right? And I went to physical therapy, but then I would stop doing the exercises and swing back and have to go back to physical therapy. And then I found yoga and it made it so that I was able to walk again, literally, because we combine a lot of those similar but different modalities, right? In yoga and stretch and all of that great stuff. And I'm a huge supporter of chiropractic work. It does wonders. A lot of my clients also go and see chiropractors. And so I am so excited to hear more about the great work that you do. And going on that note, I wanted to just ask more about, and we're talking today about the queer body. And I loved what you wrote on your podcast, your description about being queer. And it actually is so much deeper than who you have sex with, right? It goes deep into actually sometimes not fitting into a construct of what mainstream society may say that we should or should not be. With that in mind, I'd love to hear more about that, but also like, how is this work so great for people that may have a queer body, may feel that their body has different needs than others, and so on and so forth?
Well, it's really wonderful that you asked that. So the queer part is really important to me because, in this exploration of who are we and what are our gifts we have to give to the world, like many people, I felt like I was on the island of misfits from that television show. Like,
Right?
I'm quite fit for so many reasons. Like, there's just all these places where I didn't fit. And so I started to realize that I wanted to partner with the same-sexed human, but that within that, I didn't feel like a lesbian. Like, there were just all of these constructs about being a lesbian that I'm like, yeah, that's not going to work for me. I felt queer. And so then that was right in the heyday of Queer Nation. And so I got to hang out with a lot of my gay brethren with ACT UP, Queer Nation, and we got to explore the boundaries of identity. And that's one of the most beautiful things for me about sexual identity, is that once you blow up all of the expectations of who you're supposed to be as a woman, as a heterosexual, as a mom, as any of those things are, then you get to start picking what you want to be, as opposed to what the world thinks you're supposed to be. And that's kind of the queering process that started when I was about 18, of like, oh, wow, I could pick what's true for me, as opposed to following what's been prescribed to me by cultural hallucinations.
Absolutely. Cultural hallucinations. I know. So for between ages 2 and 6, we often get we do get hypnotized. We're in theta waves into what is the norm, right? And so a lot of people out there, especially queer people, especially people that went through hard things, even if they're not queer, right, have traumas, right, that are stored in the body. And I know we go deeper into this in the programs, like in releasing those tensions that you literally hold in your back and your shoulders, and those emotionally painful experiences that you may hold in your brain, right? So that you can think clearly. Literally, when you deal with those challenges, your IQ increases, you can focus. I always tell people, I took the GRE before I did yoga and wellness, and I was in the top 50%, which is great. But then after 2 years of yoga every day, I was in the top 8%. I didn't read 20 million books or anything. I just did yoga, and I'm here in the present, right? And I'm able to really focus. And I think that's kind of goes similarly hand in hand with the great work that you do in somatic healing. And I'd love to just hear more about that, like that healing process for people that have experienced challenges, whether it is, getting beat up, whether it is facing chronic health issues, whatever. Could you just speak more about what that is?
Yeah, I would love to. So when I was getting my doctorate of chiropractic, we did many hours of physiology, anatomy, all of those things. And I will just say in here, there's over 700 types of chiropractic. And the particular type of chiropractic I chose is about how to help yourself be better emotionally, physically, biochemically, anything that changes your chemistry, so that we have the potential to be who we want to be. It's not about unfortunately, our culture and our society um, believes about the human body as parts, because
Mm,
science kind of in a Newtonian way went back and separated everything out. And somatic has to do with knowing your body, but also knowing your emotional body, your spiritual body, your connections to the world. It's a more holistic viewpoint of how we're connected to everything. And so when you're looking at trauma, as you're speaking to, we can feel it just in the posture that people bring. So if I'm talking to you the same way that I was just
mhm.
talking to you now, but I bring my shoulders in, I bring my head forward, your response to me is different because you can tell that my body is taking on a fight or flight pattern. So
Mhm.
sometimes what's helpful is just helping people mirror back to, hey, do you notice that your cheeks are tight? Do you notice that your face is tight? What's happening there, that the constriction's happening? What is that information telling you? I feel like a lot of times what we do is we pathologize. We say, okay, I have patellofemoral syndrome, which is a diagnosis, right? If you come to my office and we're working with something like that, I say, hey, what are you feeling? What's your experience of what's happening in your body? Okay, now let's look at how that happened and how is it continuing to happen so that we can find the best way for your body to tell you how to heal it. So it removes the expert, right? It says it puts you, Luke, as the expert in terms of your own body's unique expression of discomfort or wellness.
I love that. Every single body is so different too, right? I know in yoga, we have a set sequence that we learn when we first become certified. But then as I get deeper and deeper and deeper into teaching yoga and wellness, I notice every single body is different, right? Some
Mm.
bodies, a squat is different than for other bodies. For a lot of people, child's pose is very uncomfortable, right? Like, so on Sunday, I taught a live Mother's Day class at Nova Kombucha. My stepmom, Janet, love you, Jenny, if you're watching this. She took my class, and at the end of class, she told me I can't put my knees on the ground, right? Because of the issues she has with her knees. And so like she adapted it as needed. And so I just love to hear more for the people out there. Maybe they do, like similar to me, they have patellofemoral syndrome, they have chronic back pain, they have an injury, something that has stopped them maybe for a month, maybe for years from doing chiropractic work, stopped them from doing yoga and wellness, right? And maybe they're more sedentary right now, and they've in some sense given up. And we're going to talk about this later. Maybe they've given up on what some call the Western industrial medical complex. We will get back to that. But what advice would you give them to get started even before they're ready?
Right. I think the most important thing we can do, not only for the soma, for your body, but for the world change that needs to happen, is to listen. And so what happens very frequently with our bodies in particular is we listen with agenda.
Mm,
So I'll give you an example on me because it's easier. When I went through menopause, I put on 20 pounds. Well, I've had lots of research about the health benefits of extra weight, right? Not so good for you. So immediately we go, oh, not good. You need to lose weight. What I would invite people to do is to step back and go, oh, my body's infinitely smart. Right now it's breathing. My heart is pumping blood. I am doing 101 things perfect right now with no effort. What is my body requesting of me that it's putting on weight? If I can go back and listen to myself and say, hey, what do you have to tell me? What's happening with you right now? And how can I support you? As opposed to what's wrong? How do I fix it? How do I change it? What pill do I need to take? What surgery do I need to do? What pose do I need to do? What chiropractic technique do I need to have? How do I have somebody outside of me fix me? Then I think the world would be a whole different place.
yes, definitely. I totally agree. We are in a results focused society, especially in the United States, right? Like where we want things instantaneous, sometimes now more than ever, right? And we've noticed a difference, especially, I worked in the schools for 8 years. We've noticed a difference with youth and also their attention spans, right? Our attention spans have actually been cut in half within the last decade, right? They've done studies on this, and it's insane, right? Because I think sometimes it does go back to the scrolling. It may go back to sometimes we have lost those really deep connection with each other and with ourselves, and just allowing ourselves to be, right, and to be okay with whatever it is, with pain, with having extra weight in our bodies. And I loved what you said too about how your body is smart in making these changes, right? So I know a lot of I work with clients who sometimes do need to limp, and it is good for you to listen to your body and limp how you need to limp, right? Until it heals itself, until we do the work and heals itself. And sometimes being okay with that limp, with walking differently, if after a surgery, for example, like one of my clients, one leg is longer than the other, right? We just have to be okay with that. And so can you just talk more about like any reflections you have about that?
Yeah, I think it's an interesting question. I think that in my work, one of the things I talk about is that there's different times and different places for different experiences. And there's not a single human amongst us who doesn't want to have good experiences and exalted spiritual experiences. We all love that. But the truth is that life is also discomfort. Life is also shadow side. Life is also things that we would call more dark that we wish to push aside because we don't want to actually get the medicine that's there. And because in the Western medical industrial complex, we can get paid lots of money for diagnosing something and fixing it, then we become slabs of meat. So if I have a syndrome, and it could be a lot of people who are over 50 will get diagnosed with DJD, which is degenerative disc disease, right? And your discs are between every single vertebra in your spine. And as we get older, they can flatten with lack of movement. And when I say movement, it's not exercise movement, like I can't stretch it out. There's a respiratory wave that we build with this style of chiropractic I do that actually moves the vertebra so that the awareness of the vertebra pumps the disc. The truth is that most people have disc decrease as they age. It's that they even call it degenerative disc disease is scary. It just intimidates people into
Yeah.
thinking, oh my God, I have a condition and it's hopeless, or I need to do XYZ to fix it. What I invite people to do is go back and go, okay, well, what am I experiencing in my body in this moment? How can I be with that experience and not change it? So, Luke, like if you were to come to me and say, gosh, mom's visiting, we got into an argument, I'm kind of in this weird space. And I was like, well, you know what you need to do about that is you need to do this, that, or the other. You go, damn, you're not even listening to me, Laura. Like, can you just hear what I have to say? Because mostly I just need to be witnessed. We do that with our bodies 24/7. And not only that, the culture insists upon the fact that we are not the experts of our own bodies, but somebody outside of us is. So if there's anything that I could recommend to anybody listening to this show now, is how about you put the focus back on yourself, see what your experience is. Can you get more detailed? Can you be more specific? So for instance, if you were to tell me I have back pain, to me as a doctor of chiropractic, your back goes from the top of your skull all the way down to your butt. So back pain could be anywhere. And then the next most often thing I hear is it is killing me. Well, what is it? Is it spiritual enlightenment? Is it, I don't know what it is. And it also shows that you've disassociated from yourself. So there's all these cultural conditions that have been created to make us as humans not have autonomy over our own bodies that I would invite you to explore. So where in my back? Oh, my mid back to the left. What I'm feeling is an achy tension pattern. Oh, achy tension. I think that might be muscles. Oh, no, what I feel is a zip zapping. Oh, that might be nerves. No, what I feel is, if you can start describing it for yourself in more rich terms, you'll get more information for yourself as to, oh, it's because I just ate a Big Mac with cheese. I know that that always causes my low back to kind of crunch up because my intestines are in pain. So I'm inviting your audience and whoever's listening to say, hey, can I listen to myself better? Can I describe what's happening to myself with more detail so that I can understand what's happening? And then if I want to go to a specialist like Dr. Laura or to Luke, then I'm giving them a richer context to understand what's happening with me so that we can partner. That would be the other most critical thing is I would really invite people to partner with their practitioners and not turn yourself over like a piece of meat. So don't get on a table and just lay there. Feel what you're feeling, participate in the process, notice what's changing. You don't even have to talk about it because it could be body to mind, but you do want to be engaging in the process. Does that answer your question, Luke?
Absolutely. And I couldn't agree more. It's like, it's really important for you to co-create and collaborate with whoever you're working with, and then also center in on what's going on. You are the expert in your body. And I know with some of my clients, they literally have mentioned to me, it started when I got divorced. It started when I started that toxic job, right? Like whatever it is, GERD or pain in their body. And so a lot of things I do when I work one-on-one, especially with my clients, is like I ask them more about like other root causes of that physical pain. I know for me, like and I've shared this a lot in my story, when I did find yoga and wellness, I was going through a very dark time, right? Like I had a very toxic job. I had lost a relationship, and also where I was living geographically in Seattle was not a good cultural match for me. Like I love the sun, I love the ocean. When I moved to San Diego, when I changed my lifestyle and I stepped into different habits, that's when things really changed. I changed who I was also around. And those relationships are shown to actually be the biggest predictor of your health too, if you have positive relationships. And I just spent Mother's Day with my stepmom and her mom, who's 102 years old. And
Mhm.
she's my grandmother's last living friend. And it was like, it's just so cool because I noticed whenever I talk to her, Doris she's not stressing out. She's in the moment. She was eating some apple pie with us on Sunday for Mother's Day. And it just got me thinking about, and the same with my great uncle on my Native American side, he lived to be 99. And I asked him one of the secrets to living such a great, fulfilled, full, healthy life. He mentioned he had a scoop of ice cream every day. So it just made me crack up because how we think about our food and the actions we do. And he also told me, he said, Luke, I just did whatever I wanted during my life. And he like helped construct a dam. He was running his own business, trying to run his own business up in Washington. And he still lived near the reservation in Yakima, Washington. Very proud of his indigenous heritage. And he spoke the language, all these great things. So I got me thinking about how the body is in the mind. So like if you're feeling good, if you're happy, your cortisol, your stress levels are low, like you will be calling in that good healthy body too. And so I just love to hear like more of what you've seen with that, especially on the healing side for people that so energetically, the people out there that may feel like I have low energy, and I know it's more than just needing to get a back rub, like or an adjustment.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I so get what you're saying. I want to be a little careful with this topic,
Yeah.
only because there are multiple people in my practice and multiple people in my life who have issues with mental health, right? With neurodivergent populations, with depression, with those things. And sometimes within this kind of wellness complex, we have this need to be perfect and great all the time, right? And to be like, yes, I'm upbeat, everything's wonderful. And sometimes it's not, right? So I think it is incredibly true that finding joy in your life can really affect your health, and also taking the moment to be with suffering when it shows up for you incredibly helps. Again, it's that the matching the tone of what's truly there. So I want to be careful with saying, mind body, because in my office, when I'm doing not somatic work, but chiropractic work, I very rarely talk to people. I do these very light touches to help their nervous system unwind core tension patterns. They can cry on the table, they laugh on the table, they sometimes have spontaneous pain release on the table. Sometimes it goes deeper into tension patterns that are held in the system. But if I move back to that, we have this incredible, incredible system of our human body that knows how to heal, and I don't actually have to know about it, then it sometimes changes things. Along the lines of what you were saying, I taught my son when he was in grade school. So, sweetie, if they call me and they say you're sick, I'm going to ask you, are you healthy sick or are you sick sick? He says, well, Ma, how do I know what's what? I said, well, you just know. Like if you say you're sick sick, I'll take you home. If you're healthy sick, your body's just healing itself and it's challenged right now because it's adapting to a new environment and you're still able to do what you need to do, we're good. And it worked like a charm. So I think there is this piece of just teaching people how to understand how to listen to their bodies and see what's healthy sick, what's sick, what's mentally, like if you're fatigued and depressed, you might need some help. It may not be just I'm good enough, I'm smart enough, and gosh darn it, people like me, which is what we were taught, right? It may be like maybe you're allergic to wheat and we need to pull you off wheat. Maybe you're not getting enough physical activity and you need to go do some yoga with Luke. Maybe your nervous system is running old wiring from your ancestors that needs to come out. So I think we have to really make a lot of room for people's experiences. And then just back to the queer part, like as I've moved into the queer body, we're also talking about a group of people, particularly if you're looking at BIPOC people, that are being oppressed all day long, in and out. And particularly if you are a non-white bodied human, people automatically identify you a certain way and treat you a certain way that can then result in a decreased health, right? Because that is stressful. And so I think in the queer body, one of the things that we're looking at is how to unwind those patterns that get locked in the system. Sometimes people feel like I'm a bit of a magician, which, it's kind of cute that I get called magician or wizard or healer. And I go, actually, your body is the healer. And it's pretty easy to see, even the children who come into my office. I'm fortunate enough to work with, gosh, my youngest is 2 weeks old and my oldest is in their 90s. And those bodies all know how to heal. My job is just to help them remember how to unwind it and unlock the tension pattern. And in queer bodies and BIPOC bodies, those bodies also hold those tensions, and even more so because we're being accosted all day long for different ways of being. I just got to work at the Trans Life conference, and it's just amazing to me how my trans community gets attacked all day long, all day long. Anyway, I started to say children can tell a mile away when you're off. You don't have to explain crap to them. You can see it in the body when you're tense. You can see it in the face. You can see it in the heart. You can see it in the hands. Bodies express very clearly where stress is held. And if we can create the conditions for each other, even in community, to feel safe, then some of those patterns unwind. That was kind
I
of a
couldn't,
convoluted swirl, but
yeah.
I hope it came back.
I couldn't agree more. And going back to the queer body, I know in my own story, me feeling safe in a yoga studio and with my friends and getting healthy in a way that felt queerly unique to me, right? As someone who is queer, who does identify as bisexual, has been really instrumental in my growth in going from being unhealthy, heavy drinking to now sober for almost 2 years. And I think for me also, I was just jotting down some notes about some of the things I've seen in fellow people in the queer community, right? Like I was talking with one of my friends who identifies as a gay man, and he is in his 50s, and he was telling me how amongst people in his generation, a lot of his friends died of HIV, right? And so, and there's even more, the older that we get, sometimes the more and more shame there is amongst people who identify as LGBT or trans beyond any of the other identities. Now, and you've seen the amount of people identifying as LGBT also increase, right? The bisexual identity amongst baby boomers, it's only about 3%, whereas if you go down to Generation Z, it's around, it's a 15 or 20%. I'd have to refer to the article, but it's double digits. And so it's really amazing to see, like, interesting to see how things have shifted, but also those health impacts, right? That change based off of what time you just happen to be born in and what society that you are in. And I was also reflecting about, you know, having entered the LGBT community in my 20s. I remember because I was in a heterosexual relationship for nearly 9 years. And then I discovered in my 20s, like, I really desired to be partnered with the same gender, to be open to both genders, right? And so at that time, I remember when I was talking to one of my friends who also identifies as bisexual, he told me, Luke, you better get ready because we judge each other in the queer community. I was like, wait, what do you mean? And he was like, we judge each other on how we look, how you dress, how you talk, how you act. And I was like, oh, okay. And I have seen that too in terms of the queer body, this high expectation that we must look really beautiful, be dressed a certain way, and not necessarily, like you said, do that shadow work, right? Even though a lot of us were beat up, right? I talk about, like, I was bullied growing up and have been made fun of, what have you. And a lot of us have experienced homelessness, right? Have experienced, you know, all these hard things, and we don't just want to push it down and act like it didn't happen. And I love what you illuminated, the value of being okay with not being happy and just allowing that to pass. Because if you don't, the only way to really release it is to go through it, to not numb it, but to go through it. And yeah, any perspective you have to add on to that?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, as a 55-year-old queer, um, I do think it's all perspective. Because I'll tell you, in my 20s, I was in such a vibrant, like, the ACT UP community for my gay male friends who had HIV, who were not getting access to drugs, the the artistry, the protests, the activism, and same with Queer Nation. You know, we didn't have marriage. I can't tell you, I think I had at least 2 or 3 marriage license. You know, well, you're married, you're not married, you're married. No, you know, because it
Yeah.
was legal back then. But there was a freedom. You know, I hear people say that being an older queer, that there was repression, but that wasn't my experience, because I got to be on the cutting edge, that queerification part, where we went, fuck this. You will not tell us how to be or who to be. That gave us something to push off of, that allowed for expansion, allowed for creation, allowed for artistry. And I think it depends which community you're in. I think one of the reasons I started the Queer Body is that I was getting really, I don't know what to say, grumpy about the commodification of the word. Queer had always meant the unboxedness, the edges, the pushing the boundaries, the creating the praxis, if you would, of a new way of being in the world. And then you could walk into Target and buy a queer mug. You could buy, and you know, you can go into anywhere. I mean, right now, there are rainbow flags on everything. It's sponsored by Bud, it's sponsored by Stoli. And I go, what happened to our community? And this is kind of what we were touching on earlier, so the queer body itself is about the queerness, the edginess of being queer, but also of body practices in a world that is a commodification of the human body as well. So where those two intersect is that the commodification of queer diluted some of the edginess, the cutting edge of defining ourselves for ourselves, of not buying into the status quo. I still have many members in my community who wouldn't get married because they don't want to buy into the heteronormative model. And similarly speaking, in the body practice, I will just say, because it's up for me today, I had a family member that was going into hospitalization today, and they assumed that we would follow all the protocols that they suggested without asking for permission. The permission is critical from the person receiving it. But many, 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 many people go into the hospital and give their power away. So this procedure that was going to be done today would require general anesthesia. General anesthesia is one of the highest risk things for individuals getting a surgical procedure. It's very rarely the surgery that causes problems. Not that we don't have incredible anesthesiologists out there. We do. I'm not dissing the profession, but it's very hard on a body, and particularly how long they're going to be under. So because of insurance reasons, they didn't approve both practices that were needed to be done today. So they were just going to put my family member under anesthesia and then come back and do it again later for insurance reasons, because they didn't get the insurance approval from both things. And since, we were already there, you might as well just do it now and come back again. And if we didn't have an astute advocacy family, it would have happened. So I think there is this queer edginess on both the somatic practice and on the gender queer sexual identity practice that has an intersect that's really important to me, where people are saying, no, we're not going to tolerate the status quo. We're going to not tolerate racism. We're going to not tolerate anti-sexism. We're not going to allow you to put us into a box about how healing is to occur. We're going to dictate to you our terms for healing. We're going to dictate to you our terms for who our identity is. That's just crucial to me. And that people who come to me through the queer body, we're invested on pulling off the shackles of some of the things we took on because we swim in this cultural goo of this is how it's supposed to be done, that we have to untangle so that people like you can help us untangle it through the practices you do with yoga, lifestyle coaching. People like me can help you unwind it through neurology or coaching and seeing how you're holding your body, how to move your body in different ways so that you can free yourself. But really looking at the places where we're putting on other people's stories that don't belong to us and finding our own unique stories so we can really change the world.
That's huge. I love that. And how you treat yourself is how you treat the world, right? So if you advocate for yourself, for your loved ones, that's how you're going to advocate for changes that we desire to see. Maybe it is politically, maybe it is personally, beyond. But I think you touched upon something really great, how the norm is not necessarily normal, A, and then B, the norm is not what's best for you, right? It's just the norm. I just returned recently, this was about 3 months ago, but I was in Asia for 7 weeks. And especially in Bali and Southeast Asia, there's a big emphasis on the preventative, right? And doing alternative practices. Like when I was in Bali, there were all of these, they were praying all the time, and there were different ceremonies that they did for people that had already passed, like in honoring their ancestors. But then also when people were sick, right? And these were like normalized things. And I remember when I came back to the United States, sometimes I've noticed in that Western industrial medical complex, sometimes we don't have as much of that as we could have otherwise, right? I know there's some amazing people that are adding in the spiritual aspect. One of my own clients is even a music therapist, right? With people that are in their last weeks of life, which I think is wonderfully beautiful. But also, I would love to hear more about your expertise in that too, in terms of like, what great things do you add in your practice in coaching and healing and the chiropractic work that may address some of that gaps that people may be experiencing in the standard care that they're getting now?
It's a juicy question, and I feel like I keep spinning off on your questions. So I'll try to focus a little bit more. When I just started as a chiropractor, so we can just start there, and not just a chiropractor, but I also picked a style of chiropractic that is so far out that I was already queer on the get-go. The point of this style of chiropractic I do is, again, to help people become who they're meant to be in the world. And the only way that I can rectify my work in the world anywhere is for the standard of change. So because I got to live overseas a lot as a child, I got to see many cultures like you're speaking of, like Bali. They have a way that's normal to them. The United States has a way that's normal to them. But then even within the United States, you have Native American roots that are very different than, I'm first generation Czechoslovakian. My roots are very different, and cultural practices that are appropriate to my family that are different than my mom's side of the family that was British, right? So there's all these cultural stories that affect our wellness and health that we may or may not examine. So when somebody comes in with back pain, right? So usually the healing moment is when somebody has a crisis. So if my low back hurts, I might not know how to heal it. And so I'm going to go out to Dr. Laura to ask some questions about what's happening with my back. Because of the way that I've learned to practice, one of the first most important things is to ask questions to you about, how long has the back pain been there? How did it happen? What does it feel like? What kind of things make it better or worse? Have you linked it to your emotional body? Do you notice your back pain gets worse when you're having an emotional moment? Do you notice your back pain gets worse when you eat something that doesn't suit you? Do you notice that your back pain gets worse when you're lifting things? Those would be examples of physical, emotional, or biochemical changes that happen in the body, right? Then on top of that, what is the wisdom in this? Your body is not just in pain because it wants to do wrong. It's like, you've been bad, I will punish you. I'm giving you back pain. It doesn't work that way. It's saying, I don't like something about what you're doing, and we need to change something. Maybe it's moved to San Diego because I don't like the weather in Seattle. Can I hear the message that the back pain's trying to tell me? Can we start using some of those skills to help our body inform us and be a partner in our healing? So my job when somebody comes in is to do a thorough check-in with them. And then I work with unwinding core tension patterns in both the flexion, lateral bending patterns that help them unwind how the nervous system binds tension and trauma. A lot of people think that there has to be a story associated with why we bind trauma, but it's actually not important. What's important is that there's creation of safety so that the story can unwind, right? So if I'll just go off one more little subject on that. Like if I come into the office, to the chiropractic office, the reason you have low back pain is because you need an adjustment. Well, that's only true if you're seeing a chiropractor who wants to sell you chiropractic, right? The reason you have back pain is because you haven't done enough yoga. Okay, the yoga teacher wants you to use their therapy. No, the reason you have back pain is because you haven't prayed properly. Okay, the spiritual community says that it's a spiritual problem. The Western medical doctor says, no, you have low back pain because you have degenerative disc disease and we need to do surgery. Okay, that's a Western medical complex. The New Age complex is, well, sorry, but your root chakra is off. You're not grounded. You need to do more grounding through your chakra. Okay, that's what did I come up with 6 different stories for the same problem? The reason it's so crucial that we put it back to the person is that they're all true stories. It's not that the chiropractic is the answer or that yoga is the answer or that surgery is the answer. They're all answers. The only person who can know what the true answer is for their healing crisis of the moment is the person experiencing it. So that's my job, is to help people really know how to feel what they're feeling and then interpret it so that they can make the right choices in their healing journey.
That's magnificent. And I think about how when you're flexible in your body, you're flexible in your mind. Like when you make these changes, like you're seeing physically, like if you're listening to us right now, just pull your shoulders back, lift your head high. I always tell my clients, make believe that you are royalty and you're balancing a cup on top of your head the entire day, right? That's going to help you, of course, with your posture, A, but B, with your confidence. C, with just feeling more positive, right? When your shoulders are pulled back and your heart is high. And definitely going deeper into that, I really fully wholeheartedly support my clients, everyone out there doing what you know is right. The answers are within you, right? So that's why when you do meditation, when you do breath work, when you do hypnosis, whatever it may be, there's multiple ways to get to that same desire. You can really get in touch with that inner voice that sometimes now more than ever may be clouded, right? We're in probably the most distracted time in human history, right? We're getting notifications, we're getting emails, where all these things are happening. And so that can sometimes make us disconnect from ourselves. Maybe it's from your body, maybe it's from your inner child, right? All of these things going on. And a lot of the work similarly, but differently that I do is getting you in touch with that body, like in touch with that playful, joyful child inside, because that child is still there, right? And I know the first time I did hypnosis on myself back in 2020, that's when I actually met my inner child. And I realized I had locked my inner child in the basement that was my brain, whatever, what have you, my mind. And since I've invited that child out here and really listened to myself and not become what I've seen and become who I am, clearly different, right? That's what's really magnetized miraculous relationships, but also happiness, also health, also just being here in the moment, right? Like doing this podcast, talking to you, like what a gift it is now. 99% of suffering is not right here in the moment. It's the what ifs, right? It's thinking about all these different scenarios, maybe lamenting the past, right? And so I love that you touch upon that. I think that's hugely valuable in what you're doing. And I'm so glad that we have common clients, or we literally have clients that work with me and they also work with you. So there's a reason why they are really getting that extra help. So thank you for your service.
Yeah, right back at you. Thank you for your service. It's so funny because what I say, Luke, is that I want you to have the matrix spine. And what I mean by that is when I shoot a bullet, you learn to just, it doesn't go in. You don't have to hold yourself. You just like let it go by. Like flexibility is where it's at. We think we got to hold it all together, but no, we really need to be able to just move with what's there. So,
Absolutely changes the human condition, right? Absolutely nothing is permanent, right?
right.
Just like these changes when we were flowing this morning and the changes that go on in your body. And sometimes it is being okay with the changes, right? Including when it's a quote unquote negative change, right? We have to sometimes go down to go up. And that's something that I really love in Chinese medicine and a lot of Eastern thought, is that instead of simply what have you, like ignoring it, popping pills, numbing it, and acting like we're happy the whole time, like actually letting yourself go into the valley so you can come up to the highs, right? And they say that when you stop numbing yourself, whether it's food, whether it's alcohol, whether it's sex, it's social media, you're going to, yes, you're going to experience more lows, but you're going to experience more highs because you're going through the lows in order to get to the mountain above, right? And that's really been what I'm all about as an 1111 numerology, is coming alive, right? Like let's live your best life. Let's release and transfer that energy into something more powerful.
Amen. Yeah, I think that's the thing, the transformation from the suffering into thriving is very helpful.
Of course.
Well, thank
Yes.
you
And
so much for having me on your show. I really appreciate the time.
I appreciate you so much, Dr. Laura. And for those of you out there that are vibing with Dr. Laura, I'm sure they'd love to know where they can follow, find you, and be a part of your movement.
So I'm 55, so this whole like follow, find, oh my Lord. So my website is probably the best way to go. So I'm thequeerbody.com. You can find about my coaching services there. You can also find the podcast there. You can follow us on Instagram and Facebook and those things, but not my strong suit. So look on the website. And then if you're interested in the chiropractic care I offer, I'm communityholistichealth.com.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much for the impact you've had in my life, my clients' lives, and the world. I'm so appreciative of you, Dr. Laura, and I highly recommend that you connect with Dr. Laura today if you haven't already done so. And if you like today's podcast, I'd love to invite you to leave a review. For those of you watching the live, comment below your biggest takeaway, any questions you may have as you pour into yourself the most valuable thing that you have. Thank you all so much and have an amazing day. Bye-bye.